Back on the Sportsmax Zone, we turn our attention now to cricket and the Ashes. Australia, with a 1-0 lead in the 5-match series, will take on England in the second test, a day-night affair at the Adelaide Oval, starting tonight Caribbean time, 11 o'clock. That's midnight Eastern Caribbean. Now, following their 9-wicket defeat in the opener, England will be boosted by the expected return of veteran pacer Jimmy Anderson, who was rested for the first test match. Anderson, with 632 test caps to his name, says he is ready for the call of duty.
All I can do is try and prepare as well as I can, stay fit. And, you know, the last few years we've certainly myself, I've been managed a bit more, so missing out the odd game to try and make sure that I'm stay fresh, especially through a long series. So that's something I've got used to, I guess, over the last few years. But to be honest, all I try and focus on is making sure my bowling is as good as it can be, my fitness is as good as it can be, and if the captain wants me to play, then I'll be there for him.
Now, along with Anderson, fellow veteran pacer Stuart Broad is also expected to be recalled. Anderson and Broad share over 900 test wickets. Meanwhile, Australia's captain Pat Cummins says the team is eagerly anticipating playing England at the Adelaide Oval.
We absolutely love coming down here. I think in terms of pure cricket venues, I think it's right up there in the world. Yeah, it's just about my favourite place to play in Australia. It's always, you know, we're always really welcomed here at the stadium. I think the wicket's fantastic. It's super consistent. It's always got a really fair battle between, you know, bat and ball. And yeah, we love playing here. The crowds turn out. I think it's a sellout for the first couple of days here. It's a real event. We always have lots of family and friends that this is their one test match each year they come down to. So it's slightly different in some ways to a red ball, but we love it.
World #1 bowler at the moment, Pat Cummins. Australia have won all 8 of their day-night tests, including 5 at the Adelaide Oval. Cummins also revealed his playing 11 for tonight's fixture, which of course will be live on Sportsmax, as we said, starting at 11 o'clock, midnight Eastern Caribbean time. So the Aussies have decided on their 11 for this fixture, and the Englishmen have decided on a 12. There's the Aussie 11, Pat Cummins, Marcus Harris, David Warner, Marnus Labuschagne, Steve Smith, Travis Head, Cameron Green, Alex Carey. There's Mitch Stark, Nathan Land, and Jai Richardson, who comes in for the injured Josh Hazelwood. And of course, David Warner had to pass a fitness test because he did damage his ribs in the first test, struck by Ben Stokes' delivery. Now, England, unlike the Australians, have revealed a 12-man squad, so one of these players won't play. Joe Root captain, Jimmy Anderson, Stuart Broad, Rory Burns, Joss Butler, Haseeb Hameed, Jack Leach, Dawid Malan, Ollie Pope, Ollie Robinson, Ben Stokes, and Chris Woke. So, and England, 12 there announced, and of course they will be declaring their 11 before match time. Joining us now to preview the second test match in Adelaide, international cricket commentator and correspondent Fazeer Mohammed. Faz, the first test match was a comprehensive win by the Aussies at home. You did predict in our preview with you that you thought the Aussies would take care of England in that opening test. A day-night affair now. Do the English have a better chance here to get a better result than they did in the first?
Yeah, my prediction, along with other than 999,999, so predicted the same thing. It was fairly predictable in that sense, lads, as you know only too well. I think the ping ball is a slightly different situation. Not necessarily saying that England will automatically bounce back, because clearly they're putting a lot of eggs in this pink ball basket. Also, for the 5th test match, which will not be at Perth, that's going to be at Hobart, another pink ball test match. That's why they've saved Jimmy Anderson and also Stuart Broad. Let's not forget Stuart Broad with over 500 test wickets for this test match as well. So I would expect them to be a lot more competitive. But I just think the evidence of what we've seen from England playing in Australia, it's not just about the Ashes. It's not just about playing Australia. It just seems to be that England starts psychologically on the back foot from the moment they see a kangaroo bouncing past them, because whenever they play in Australia, they seem to be really in a state of confusion, as evidenced by that first ball of the series.
Yeah, to be fair, Faz, the England bowling attack wasn't bad in that first test. You know, several of the fast bowlers had put in some good shifts. So with the anticipation that both Broad and Anderson will play starting tonight, First of all, do you think both will play? And who would be left out for you?
I would expect both to play. I think it could depend on what they see tonight our time, whether or not they'll go with Jack Leach or play the extra seamer, depending on the conditions. Remember, it's a pink ball, so everything would appear to favour going all seam. But you never know. And as Pat Cummins mentioned, Adelaide, if it actually can go the distance, which the track record suggests that it doesn't, the spinner might come in a bit later on. But I take your point about the bowling. But when you're out for 147 on the first morning of a series, you've dug yourself into a deep hole. When you trail by over 200 runs, even with that excellent start to their second innings, it's a long, long, long way back. And it was always going to be a situation where England, having dug themselves into a deep hole, were just struggling to try to get out of it. So, yeah, the bowlers should be able to do a very good job, a much better job. But I just think England's batting, which is so frail, so vulnerable, except for that big partnership we saw in the second innings of the first test, that Australia will certainly be backing themselves, even without Josh Hazlewood, who I think is a big loss to the Australian bowling lineup.
Faz, as it relates to the pink ball test, Australia has never lost a pink ball test at home. But they also have what I believe to be an X-factor, Nathan Lyon, who has taken 19 wickets as a spinner. Again, I mean, for Australia, by far more than anybody else has. I think Ashwin has 4 in a pink ball test. Will he be the X factor in this test match, or will it be the fast bowling attack as per usual?
I suspect he will come in the longer the match progresses. But you're right. And this is the thing, Leighton. You know, we often find ourselves talking about horses for courses. But there are some horses who can transcend the courses, who can give you something, even if they may not pick up a bag full of wickets, but they present a different challenge. And I think that's what Nathan Lyon does now. He's finally gotten this thing off his back about the 400th test wicket. He finally got it to get that important wicket that started the England slide in the second innings. And therefore, I think he's going to be a factor, whatever the condition, whether he turns out to be that X factor that brings about the critical breakthroughs might be debatable. But I think just him being part of the team gives the captain, in this case, Pat Cummins, that alternative, that variation, that quality variation that means that he could always mix things up if for whatever reason the seamers aren't bringing about the success.
Mm-hmm. And on the other side of that, Leach, the way he was mauled in that first test, would it be best to leave him out and go with an all-pace attack, given that Anderson and Broad are now back?
Not necessarily, Leighton, because I think, Leach, to me, like any spinner, if you're a spinner, you understand that there are going to be days like this. There are going to be test matches like this. It really depends on whether he's mentally strong enough. If you go by that famous last wicket partnership with Ben Stokes, you might want to argue, yes, with the ball, it might be a different thing, whether he's been shaken by his lack of success. But I would think that if they recognize that there is something in that surface that would encourage the slower bowlers, I think that Leach would retain his spot. But again, so much depends on the psychological makeup of individuals. Mm-hmm. And really, from this distance, it's difficult to tell whether he can easily bounce back from what happened just a few days ago.
Faz, how good is Marnus Labuschagne? He, in the computerized ICC player rankings this week, he unseated Steve Smith and Kane Williamson to move up to number 2 in the batting rankings. Consistent and having a lot of appetite for runs. But how good is he?
Let me put it this way. If you're talking about how good he is, as far as the numbers, he's obviously one of the best. But I wouldn't, even if I was being paid to go and watch Marnus Labuschagne bat or watch Steve Smith bat, I would say it's okay, I'll watch somebody else. It's like watching Jacques Kallis. They are metronomic. They are machines. In fact, for those who saw the great Donald Bradman, they will tell you that he was no great stylist, but was a run machine. And many of us, not talking about connoisseurs or anything like that, some of us like to see a bit of flair, a bit of style, a bit of that something. But look at the numbers, and again, we can't overlook that. Marnus Labuschagne has done all that is required, and you listen to all of the dialogue around him, the coaches that work with him, the elements to his game. He is an object lesson for our young West Indies cricketers. to understand what needs to be done to improve your game. And all credit to him. He may not be the most attractive batsman in the world, but you mentioned Jimmy Adams inadvertently, but old Jimmy Adams was averaging almost 70 plus in the best matches of his career.
Yeah, and you know what? The turnaround is something that's significant with Labuschagne, Faz, because his record a couple of years ago didn't set us up for this kind of production that is coming off his bat at the moment.
Absolutely. And again, that's why I reiterate the point. Look at what he has done to transform his game. Going back to certain coaches who, when you hear the names, you say, well, who is he? He has no status in the game, no ranking, no nothing. How many test runs did he score? Nobody. But he has chosen wisely to identify individuals who would work on elements of his game that make a difference. And sometimes it's about that. It's the slightest nuance, the slightest bit of an adjustment. Whatever the sport, whatever the circle, maybe it could be just mental about your approach to batting when you come to the middle rather than being a bundle of nerves to calm down and just focus on picking the gaps and so on. And eventually the runs will come. There are so many elements to this thing called batsmanship or any other sport for that matter, that it really comes down to acknowledging what are your weaknesses, recognizing your strength. In that way, it reminds us a lot of talking about Jimmy Adams, Larry Gomes, Mr. Dependable. Mm-hmm. He eliminated all his flair and elegance about his game, didn't become a particularly attractive batsman, but 6 of his 9 test hundreds were against Australia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember sitting in the commentary box many years ago, Faz, with Michael Holding, and the West Indies had started their struggles. This would have been in the mid-1990s when, the unbroken run had ended, and they were pointing out a few of the West Indies batsmen at the time, and Mikey was saying that none of these batsmen are as good as Larry Gomes, even though Gomes, during the period when he was playing, wasn't considered one of the top-flight West Indies batsmen, and he was just highlighting how much West Indies cricket had declined.
Indeed, and remember, Lance, that is 26 years ago. Mm-hmm. We are talking about a time 26 years ago. And we find it difficult to find even our younger players with all the ability that they have to understand that mentioning a Larry Gomes, mentioning a Viv Richards, mentioning our great, is not about burdening them, but helping them to understand what did Larry Gomes do. Because remember, when Larry Gomes started his test career, he was a real shotgun. And he scored tons of runs, but his first 3 test innings were duck, 11, duck. And then he was dropped. So he decided what is more important is to score runs and forget the flair. And then we saw the results. So sometimes it's an object lesson, not about burdening anybody, but understanding that whatever you're trying to do has been done before.
As we're talking about the batting, Fazeer, England has been, the batting lineup has been extremely fragile, especially when they're playing against Australia. But against other opposition, they're not that bad. Is it just psychological, or is it that the Australians have worked so much on their respective weaknesses, why they look so frail against an Australian attack?
I hear you on that, Leighton. As I said, I just think from the moment they land and realize they're just a kangaroo jumping past, a madness overtakes them. Because you see these players, so many of them, Ollie Pope, you see them looking so good. You see Rory Burns, having a fairly decent summer in the last English season. Then he walked right across the stumps to get bowled around his leg with the very first ball of the series. The English, whether it has to do maybe with their media as well, just remember that every series that is played prior to the Ashes is always spoken of in the context of the Ashes. It's infuriating when the West Indies, India, England, everybody plays. They say, well, he's looking good for the next Ashes campaign, or he's doing well. Maybe he should come in for the Ashes. That they build this thing up so much that they are creating their own pressure. They are creating their own circumstance where it becomes larger than life. And as a result, the anxiety, the tension, the nervousness is multiplied manifold, and the others just capitalize on it.
Yeah.
Jimmy Anderson hasn't played a test since September the 5th when they played against India. He's 39 years old. Is rust a possible factor given that he hasn't played test cricket in about 3 months?
I don't think so, Leighton, because as he himself mentioned, he has grown accustomed to this. I don't think he's happy with it. because I don't think anybody with that level of competitiveness would be told, well, you have to miss every 2 test matches in a 5-test series because of managing the situation. But when you look at his style, his approach to the crease, it's metronomic, it's repeatable. He can do it in his sleep, much like Courtney Walsh, over after over. So I think that I would be surprised if rust becomes an issue. If anything, he might be too eager.
Okay. All right, Faz, you know what? I know that you are not a huge fan of neither England nor Australia, but sell the Ashes for us. Step out of the box, because a lot of cricket fans, with the exception of Fazeer Mohammed, will be glued to their television tonight, midnight Eastern Caribbean time, 11 o'clock in Jamaica on Sportsmax, to see the Ashes, which everyone loves, and Faz doesn't.
Well, I understand why the Ashes are such a big deal. Remember, this is about history. Remember, you have to understand the history of it. Australians basically Australia, the country, was a prison colony. When they with that burden, when they essentially years on, when they started to play Test cricket. So you have that history of England, the stiff upper lip, looking down their noses, upper crust, hoity-toities or whatever. And the Australians, the down-to-earth descendants of criminals and the worst of England and so on. And that's why the Australians love to beat up on England. That is why England always look at an Ashes series as something that they must prevail in, come high water. It's all about that history.
Well sold, Faz. Well sold, Faz. A lot of viewers tonight on Sportsmax. We'll talk again soon.
No problem. Take care,
okay. And as we head to the break, it's time for us to relive a memorable sporting moment from earlier this year. Today, we'll have a look at Flashback number 10, which was a dagger to the heart of Manchester City supporters. Here's how Chelsea lifted their second UEFA Champions League title in Porto.
Held on by Chilwell. Mount. And Mount has opened up the Manchester City defence. It's Havertz. Chelsea in front. Kai Havertz with his first ever Champions League goal, and he scored it in the final. It's the goalkeepers. Over hit by Edison, and it is Chelsea who have won the UEFA Champions League 2021. A moment to savour. Chelsea, UEFA Champions League winners 2021.